All right, we're live. All right, good morning, everyone. Thursday, February 9:15-ish. And we are having conversations in and around emergency management and disaster response omnibus bill, which is going to be a broader community-level conversation moving forward over the next couple of weeks. So before we get to council, we have a couple of guests with us who want to share some insight and perspective from their respective organizations. The first two guests will be speaking to more of the emergency response aspects of things. And I know these aren't unfamiliar faces to the committee, but they are very familiar faces to me. Gentlemen, how are you?
Good morning,
Mr.
sir.
Chair.
Oh, wow, that was a nice, like you did that in tandem. That was well timed.
We practiced.
Well, you nailed it, Chief. Okay, so I want to start off with Dean Gilmore because I'm just going right down the punch list that I have. And Senator Calamar and I and a couple of others had the opportunity to sit down with Dean and hear about some of the perspectives and desires from the Firefighters Association last, I don't know, fall, late winter, whatever it was. But for the sake of me stopping my needless diatribe, Dean, the table is yours.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman Brown and members of your committee. My name is Dean Gilmore. I'm a past assistant chief of the New Haven Volunteer Fire Department, serving them for 48 years, and for the past 2 years, serving the City of Regents Fire Department. I represent Addison County Firefighters Association on the Vermont State Firefighters Association Executive Board and represent the Vermont State Firefighters Association as chair of the Governmental Affairs Committee. I've served in the capacity of a town fire warden, assistant, and warden. So the proposal that the Forest and Parks I was asked to speak on, this came up at our last VSFA Executive Board meeting on January 18th and was supported. There's many cases throughout the state where the fire warden is appointed by the select board and the person is not even able to navigate an incident or trained to manage an incident. There are many cases where the select board making the appointments have no clue what the duties of a warden are. Bringing the rules that were established in 1904 up to date only makes sense. Make the fire chief the warden. He or she will have to deal with the fires kindled that get out of control. He or she are in better positions to educate the general public on the rules and liabilities, and are in better position to submit required reports, which would also result in more accurate data on actual fires for forests and parks, which I believe could increase the funding from the federal government. There are towns that do not have their own fire department, but appoint a warden that has no firefighting experience or training. Moving that position to the chief of the department that covers these towns gives them a better handle on permits being issued. We commend the Forest and Parks on making the effort to clean up outdated rules and striving to work with the fire service when we have these out of control fires. That doesn't mean that the chief, this would actually allow the chief to appoint some of those wardens, but gives them control over those deputy wardens, so-called. Presently, if a town select board decides they're going to appoint a warden and a deputy warden, the warden has no authority over the deputy warden, so they don't have to work together. There's no requirement. Thank you, Chairman Brown, for allowing me to speak before you and your committee. Respectfully, Dean.
Okay, and I kind of wish Representative Hooper of Randolph was in here because he was kind of trying to help us organize things in and around fire services. So the policy ask you're looking for is for more continuity and like direct authority over the. Your connection was a little muddled, so I was not picking up everything you were saying.
Okay, so basically right now, the way the system is set up, the fire warden is not, although the Forest and Parks would like to have the fire warden a member of the local fire department. That does not always happen. And so they have no control over over that the permit process or anything. And it's the fire department that has to go deal with the out of control fires. Generally, and like I stated earlier, many times the warden is not capable of going out and actually doing anything to maintain that fire, doesn't have the training to be an incident commander. And this would, being a fire chief, they need all that training. And they get basic wildland fire training. When any firefighter that comes into the fire service gets that basic training. Fire wardens don't get that basic training.
Understood.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
David DiBiase for the record. And I think Kate's in the room, maybe. I think I see her head behind you guys. Really? Sorry. So I think this is just generally in support of
Rep Nugent was like, hi, good to see you.
Hi, Kate. Hi, both Kates. I miss Kate and I got to work together when I was deputy at BGS, and so I'm excited to hear her over here pushing forward some of these other items from the ANR side. So this is really in support of what ANR is putting forward in their draft of kind of repositioning a bill from the early 1900s or the statute language from then into modern times. As the chief of Vergennes, I'm a great example of that, right? So the city of Vergennes covers the city of Vergennes. We also cover the towns of Panton, Waltham, and 50% of the town of Ferrisburgh. So we're in a kind of unique position where I'm the chief. We respond to the incidents, but we generally have no oversight or say into the activities in those other towns that are not directly my municipal body. So I have oversight into Vergennes, but when it comes to Panton, Waltham, or the 50% of Ferrisburgh that I cover, those town fire wardens may make decisions that are either outside the capacities of my organization to respond to. I certainly know that you guys are talking in the state as a whole, and ANR is saying, hey, these things are getting worse, right? We're seeing more and more of these incidents across the state. I don't think the trend is going to go the other way anytime soon, unfortunately for us. And so when the local fire departments get depleted, and somebody could be issuing permits while we're in another jurisdiction fighting a wildland fire, and they have no idea, right? There's no continuity between those entities to understand what types of capacity, what incidents have occurred or are occurring currently while they may be issuing permits in a town, 2 towns over. And so that's an issue that really doesn't have a solution at this point. And what ANR is proposing and DEC or Parks and Recs is proposing solves those issues for us. And I think, like Dean said, to echo that sentiment, I'm also the vice president of the Vermont State Firefighters Association, and we really support the changes that are being put forward, and we think it'll be hugely beneficial also for the continuity between Parks and Rec and the local on the ground troops, right? And so that gets kind of murky when you guys, the state deploys assets, which is a kind of a new thing for them to the degree that they have been, trying to work with either the incident commander being the fire chief or the forest fire warden that may otherwise have no integration into the fire departments. So it would clear that line of communication up as well. And in worst case scenario, right, if there was a disagreement, the fire chief is still the end result to say, hey, Mr. Fire Warden, I know I appointed you, but I'm the guy having the ultimate say because I'm the person responsible, and we're going to change that direction at this point because of the incidents we have going on. So very supportive of this, and we're very happy to see something changing in this front.
All right. No, thank you. And so this actually made me flashback on some testimony we took on another matter yesterday, the day before, where somebody said we're using 19th century statute and we're just trying to solve 21st century problems. So this seems to fall into that same sort of vein of policy updates. So, okay, totally understood. And we know we have the proposal. And so that's wonderful words to work off of. So it's good to hear that you're supportive of that. Any questions for Dean or Mr. DiBiase on this one? And I think, David, you wanted to speak to something else as well, right?
Yeah, if your committee has time to hear me out for a moment and see if we can have conversation about that, that'd be great.
Cool. Yeah, we got nothing but time right now. We actually have a good slug, but like on this first chunk, do we have any questions from the table?
Makes sense.
Care to chime in on this one? Or?
Okay,
Cool. All right, look at that. Moving briskly. All right, Chief DiBiase, to your next point.
So this kind of wraps up to some testimony I gave your committee last year around the urban search and rescue, not specifically to the state entity, but to the support systems that the local municipalities provide through MOUs or MOAs with Vermont Emergency Management. So I think you guys are mostly aware that the state has their USTAR team, which has water assets or technical rescue assets. But generally, the first line of defense, just like our fire warden things we were just talking about, are the local groups. So departments like mine, and there's I think maybe 7 or 9 others in the state that have agreements to assist the state of Vermont. And then there's certainly other local teams that don't have these agreements, but are those communities' first responders out the door to a technical rescue incident. And I kind of emphasize that because it's different than our firefighting duties, right? Those things are not in the firefighter 1 manual. It's not generally what we're taught to go respond to a house fire or the things that we think about. But the fire service has kind of evolved into this all hazards mitigation group that responds to anything that comes in. So if somebody falls down a cliff, somebody gets hurt on a hiking trail, somebody in the back countries of Vermont skiing gets hurt with our ski patrol friends, a water rescue occurs in a local swimming hole, or gosh forbid, we have some catastrophic flooding like we've seen over the last couple of years. So I'm hoping to look towards a micro grant. These programs are very expensive. They do not generally get funded as a priority when towns are struggling to put fire apparatus or put fire gear on the backs of their firefighters as it is. So when we look at taking on extra duties, per se, like a technical rescue team, the training, the equipment is immensely expensive, and we can certainly provide some more data on that for the committee. But we were hoping to put forward a micro grant. I think my initial request was like $25,000 a year that DPS would administer towards these technical rescue assets that the state has with MOUs or local groups have independently of that would fund training and equipment. So I think the limit was 5 per year. And again, I can forward this on to you, Mr. Chair Barong, with a limit of $25,000, but $5,000 to a single team sounds like not a lot maybe to you guys and the big money that goes around, but for us, $5,000 is really changing for these programs, and it puts gear on their backs. It puts training that would otherwise not be able to be sent away. So if I send somebody to a water rescue training, it's probably $800 per person, and I have to do that every 3 years to keep them in that certification loop. That's just one water rescue, not the rope rescue, not the trench rescue, not the ice water rescue that all of these teams somehow fundraise, find, beg, borrow, and steal for. It would be a huge addition to this group across the state to bolster our capabilities as a state to deploy and respond to these incidents. So that's the gist of what I was hoping to accomplish. I kind of, and Kate's going to laugh on the backside here, BGS had the communities grants that they serve out, and it's very similar in nature to that's carried through in the capital bill, where there's a group of people. I think the bill language stated some volunteer fire, career fire, EMS, DPS, and members of both House Gov committees to kind of put forward, okay, here's the requests. We prioritize the people that serve the entire state, and then secondary to that, we fund the groups that serve their very much smaller geographic areas. So I know that was a lot in a little bit of time, but hopefully that gives you a great overview of the idea behind trying to fund at a small scale, but pretty impactful scale to the local responders.
No, that's appreciated. Representative Hango has a question.
Thank you. You said water rescue only?
No, I think tech rescue as a whole. Water rescue is probably the one that most people know about, but water rescue, rope rescue, ice rescue, any of these technical disciplines that are outside of our normal firefighting duties.
Okay, I'm glad I asked because I thought you were excluding those and only focusing on water.
No, I think,
I heard it the same way.
It's a great question.
You said it.
And I'll say, like, we went last year just in my area. Our technical team went to Middlebury, for example, right, with the town of Middlebury Technical Rescue Team and Middlebury PD and the Vermont State Police backcountry team. And we spent 8 hours rescuing one individual on the hillside in the snow and the temperatures that we're experiencing now. and whatever they showed up with, to be fair, right? Like some people had great gear, some people didn't. And sometimes we got into situations where people came off and we were having to relieve teams that may have gotten close to the limit of becoming part of the incident, right? And emergency responders always want to do the thing and they want to get it done and they want to make sure they're helping those people. And we get really close to that line sometimes, and gear and equipment goes a long way in training, of course, to prepare us to not put ourselves in a position where we're adding to that incident. So we see it. We try really hard with what we've got, but this small amount of money would be just big deal on something on that local level.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And it's great work that you
Thank
do.
you.
So I guess we're creeping up on, of course, we're starting to build this. Correct, yes. We're starting to like work on this bill itself, but it's also budget memo season for appropriations. So if you could send a letter outlining that request for us to consider, that would be helpful for us to catalog once we start having that conversation.
I'll get it to you guys, but before the end of the day.
And could you copy our committee assistant, Nick Adams, on it, please?
Yep, absolutely. The keeper of all.
Yes, we need help in that respect.
He is a warehouse.
We all do.
Yes. All right, any other questions for these gentlemen while we have them in front of us? No, seeing no hands.
Actually, I do have one.
Okay, Representative Hooper of Randolph.
What made you decide 25,000 would be your ask as opposed to say 50 or?
It was me trying to, I was deputy commissioner at BGS, and sometimes these small numbers actually make it through. When we make them too large, I get scared that people are going to take them off the table. But any more than that would only be even more wonderful and appreciated by the groups that take their time to do this. So I think when Dean and the Addison County reps met, they did have that same conversation and they kind of pushed that number higher.
Sure.
I just don't want to get lost because it gets too big, to be fair. Like any little bit for us is huge.
Yeah, it makes sense. That's a good calculus. What though, if like, what would be the largest optimal number? If it was,
Infinity and beyond.
It's fair.
When it comes to government budgeting, spending every last dime just because you have to me is a ridiculous thing. So there is a sweet spot. And the truest thing he said was $5,000 goes a really long way in the fire service compared to other investments. Like that's a really good place to put 5 Gs. And that's that tiny amount of money for us. So
I think, the 25 grand is huge. I would love to see it be successful in the ways of state government with DPS kind of heading that up. And I think I would love to see the USAR task force leader, which we created in statute last year, right, too, or the year before. And I'm just very excited that these groups have brought this stuff forward. He oversees these teams and understands the dynamics. But I think if we piloted this with a smaller amount of money and maybe we built it out over time to show that these aren't going to, I hate to see money go to a place that this isn't a team that actually responds. This isn't a team that actually gets out the door to help others and it's going to something that's not. So that 25 to 50, I would say let's expand from 5 to 10 organizations as opposed to more money to each. And maybe there's a caveat there within that grant program to say, hey, if we really do, this project really makes a whole lot of sense. Like you need 10 water rescue suits this year, or your team's going to have to come off board. That grant committee has the ability to say, okay, we can issue up to a $10,000 grant in those instances. So some flexibility. But yeah, I think let's make sure it works and does what I think it'll do, which will make a big impact.
okay, thank you.
Representative Brown, I would just comment that when we had our meeting there, and I brought this up, the same question came up, why just 25,000? And I think that we agreed that, if we shoot for 100,000 and end up with 25,000, we're gaining a lot. So that was the figure that we agreed on at that meeting to shoot for. And certainly if we got that 100,000, we'd be ecstatic. So.
No. And that's like, sort of I'll call it the risk calculation of building in cushion to an ask is, does the cushion scare away the ultimate desired goal? So it is an interesting thing to try and work. But yeah, get us the request letter with like a little bit of detail and any other information that you think is relevant to us, for us. So we have give us a good understanding of what you're looking for. But if you could just like outline that a little bit in the request itself, so we had something tangible to work off of, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I have a bill request that I put together earlier in the session that I don't think made it through. I think the Senate was going to try to put something forward. So I have some bill language. I don't know if that'll be enough to extract the data from, or if you wanted a different format, but that I could send within minutes. So
If you could just maybe bifurcate the ask from the language,
Okay,
like give it
perfect.
to us in like two buckets so we can understand the like nuance of the request. But yeah,
Sure.
it just fragmented a little. Rep Hango.
You mentioned a grant committee to make the decisions, who gets the grants. I'm sorry, I missed this. Does one already exist, or would that have to be stood up?
it would be, I think DP, it would need to be stood up, and we did outline some people in that bill language that we thought would be appropriate to make sure that we are encompassing everybody. We're flexible, man. If that money's out there, however makes the decisions, as long as they're not the people putting it somewhere else, I don't think we're hard ask on that. But I think the USAR team leading that group only makes the most sense to ensure we're getting it to the places that really need it. And they just have a better handhold on the statewide enterprise than the local people do.
So if that doesn't already exist in statute, I would want to see that language, who you think should be on that committee, please.
I could send kind of the overview like the chair asked for, and I'll send the bill language that we came up with both, and you guys can
Perfect.
have it all.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Anybody else for these gentlemen? Seeing no hands. All right. Thank you, guys. I'll see you back.
Thank you all for your time.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we're Glenn. Moria. We came in for a one-on-one chit chat, but we were discussing the relevant bills. So thank you for sticking around and offering more formal testimony.
I appreciate it. It's wonderful to see everyone. I'm Lauren Glenn Davidian, no longer Executive Director of Policy, Public Policy Director of CCTV, representing Vermont Access Network and the Community Radio Network. As I've testified before, we are requesting $1.89 million to support community communications, which does also include emergency communications, particularly on the radio side. And the governor's budget includes 1.35 million. So our request is about 540,000 in addition to that level funding. The additional 540 is due to the decline in cable revenue, the increase in expenses calculated at the COLA cost of living, and the addition of the community radio team, which is 9 community radio stations across the state, in addition to the 24 community media centers. So we are hoping that your budget memo will include the full 1.89 million. And we're happy to answer any questions. And I appreciate, of course, always the friendliness of this room and the opportunity to present.
Thank you. And yes, Representative.
Thank you. And can you remind us, out of that $540,000, is it $90,000 for community radio that has been added in?
That's correct.
Yeah.
I got pissed off.
Was there budget money for the radio last year, or is this an all new program?
The radio was funded out of an emergency. I don't know what the bill was. Do you remember, Representative Hooper? There was a separate bill, emergency services, in which the radio team was included. So we were asked by the Secretary of State and also Senate Appropriations Chair to include radio in the Vermont Access Network ask this year for operations.
Rep Hagan?
I think it was our omnibus bill last year, was it not?
It was this very same
The
vehicle that we're
emergency,
building. That's why I was like, great timing.
yes.
Rep Hooper, Burlington.
I don't know if you saw, I saw the increase in coverage that contribution last year gave to radio in certain area, that probably tripled the coverage area moving the antenna from in a hole up to the top of something.
For GDR and GDH, yeah, they moved the antenna up and it increased your coverage area. And I think you remember that Lou Mulvaney-Stanek testified earlier. They are so articulate about the value and importance of radio during these times. And certainly community television doesn't necessarily have, we have the reach because we can go out and we're also on the internet. So as long as there's power, people can watch these emergency programs that we produce also. But radio is certainly the most reliable means. As they were describing, you can get into your truck and listen, and that hadn't even occurred to me. Of course, that's true. That's what people need to do in those circumstances.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to think if I had, I think I want to like digest the memo before I ask questions, but I guess I think I'll address there. And I think I got enough input from our conversation before you sat down, so. Anything else from you?
Just a quick question.
Sure.
In our letter to the committee assistant, to your committee, by way of the committee assistant, would you like us to mention the omnibus bill or just?
The request is fine. We know what the vehicle is. Yeah. So just like,
That's fine.
speak to the need for the larger ask that's what's in the, governor's budget request,
Yes. Yeah.
or not budget.
We calculated those numbers many times. You know, the gap is more in the order of 2.5 million, but we're not expecting the legislature to make up that whole difference, of course. So that was how we came up with that number for the Secretary of State. So thank you.
Rep. Ango, other hand.
I do believe that Lou Mulvaney-Stanek has addressed most of this in her letter to us, but if you would like to just close the loop and have something under your name,
Yes,
that would be great.
we've got it coming from Paul Snyder. Wonderful. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
All right. So moving on to council. Does it just get, hold on
Yeah,
one second, Tucker, hold on one second, Tucker.
Hold off.
Yeah, what, I'm gonna call a short time out on committee right now, just to do a little bit of document review before we start speaking with council. So let's hit the pause button until